Released on February 1st of 2008, Morning Tide was the second set of the Lorwyn block and the 44th Magic: The Gathering expansion. Morning Tide contained 150 total cards, which included 60 commons, 40 uncommons, and 50 rares, with the symbol of the set being that of the rising sun. Morning Tide was sold in 16-card booster packs and fat packs. In the booster packs, just like in the Lorwyn set prior, card number 16 was either a rules card or a creature token card. Token cards included a black 1/1 fairy rogue with flying, a white 5/5 giant warrior, and the 2/5 treefolk shaman. Alongside that, Morning Tide also had 4 pre-constructed decks, which were the blue-white deck Battalion, the blue-black deck going Rogue, the red-green deck Warriors Code, with the last deck being the white-black and green deck dubbed Shamanism. The pre-constructed decks and the fat packs contained a Pro Tour player card as well. And just as most sets at the time, Morning Tide was accompanied by the novel of the same name written by Corey Hearn-Donn and Scott McGough. In regard to the theme of this set, Morning Tide expanded upon Lorwyn's flavor attributes by shifting the tribal focus away from the 8 races of Lorwyn. 3 mechanics were introduced in this set: Prowl, Kinship, and Reinforce. The first 2 mechanics were class-specific keywords for rogues and shaman, while Reinforce appeared on multiple non-class related cards. The Prowl mechanic is an alternate cost to play a spell, which may be used if you have dealt combat damage with a creature that shares a creature type with the card that has Prowl. Latchkey Fairy was an example of this mechanic. Kinship is an ability word that means at the beginning of your upkeep, you may look at the top card of your library. If it shares a certain creature type, you may reveal it. This would trigger certain effects based on the card. The last mechanic, Reinforce, is an activated ability. You may pay a card's Reinforce cost and discard it from your hand whenever you can play an instant. If you do, you can put a certain number of +1/+1 counters on the target creature. The card Swell of Courage is an example of this mechanic. The Reinforce mechanic works well with the tribal counter creatures from Morning Tide, allowing creatures that do not have the required class to receive +1/+1 counters and trigger these effects. Morning Tide included 1 mirrored pair, 2 reprints, and 1 functional reprint. The mirrored pair of this set was the black sorcery card Mind Shatter and the blue sorcery card Mind Spring. Mind Shatter has the effect of targeting a player to randomly discard X amount of cards based on the amount of mana paid, while Mind Spring let the player who played the card to draw a number of cards based on the amount of mana they paid. There were 2 reprinted cards in this set. The first reprint was the red creature bold were Intimidator, which was last seen in the set Future Sight. This card was included because this card could temporarily change other creatures' class to either a coward or warrior depending on the mana cost paid. The other reprint was the 2/3 green creature Elvish Warrior. It was first printed in Onslaught and was last printed in the 9th edition core set. The one functional reprint was the blue creature Fencer Click. This creature played the same as the Exodus card, Wayward Soul. The only difference was that Fencer Click was a fairy soldier, not a spirit. There were 11 total cycles in the Morning Tide expansion set. The first cycle was the Chosen Creature type, common instant or sorcery spells that has an effect based on the number of creatures of a chosen type. The cards of this cycle were Coordinated Barrage, Distant Melody, Pax Disdain, Roar of the Crowd, and Luminescent Rain. The next cycle were the Bannerets, a cycle of common creatures that reduces the casting cost of 2 creature types. This cycle included Ballyrush, Stony Brook, Frog Tosser, Bright Hearth, and Bosk being the last of the Bannerets. There were the common changelings, otherwise known as the common shapeshifter creatures of this set. Each of these changelings were every creature type and had a different effect or ability depending on the card. This cycle included Changeling Sentinel, Moth Dust Changeling, Moon Glove Changeling, Warspike Changeling, and Game Trail Changeling. The next 2 cycles were the Elemental Creatures. The common variant of this cycle had creatures that came into play with 1/1 counters on them and had an activated ability that used the counters. This cycle included Shinewind, Flood Chaser, Fester Creep, Sting Magi, and Fertilid. The uncommon variant of the Elemental Creature cycle had the Evoke mechanic instead. The 5 cards of this cycle included Meadowboon, Nevermaker, Awful Snout, Spite Bellows, and Walker of the Grove. Another cycle that included a common and uncommon cycle were the kinship creatures. All 10 of these creatures had the kinship ability. The common kinship creatures were Kithkin Zephyr-Knot, Ink Dissolver, Squeaking Piegrub Fellows, Mudbutton Clanger, and Winnower Patrol. As far as the uncommon version of the kinship creatures, this cycle included Wandering Greybeard, Waterspout Weavers, Nightshade Schemers, Pyroclast Consul, with the last card being Wolfskull Shaman. There was the Lesser Tribal Lord cycle, which were rare creatures that granted a bonus to or interact with creatures of a specific class. The cards of this cycle included Battletide Alchemist, Kinsbale Cavalier, Scarblade Elite, Guiltleaf Archdruid, and Greatbow Doyen. The Tribal Counter Lords were a cycle of uncommon creatures that used 1/1 counters in a way that benefits creatures of its type. The Tribal Counter Lords were Sense Tactician, Sage of Fables, Una's Blackguard, Rageforger, and Bramblewood Paragon. Next were the Clashback spells, which were uncommon spells that came back to your hand if you won the Clash. Clash was essentially a very quick mini-game that had players reveal the top of their cards. Whoever had a card with the higher mana value won the Clash. This cycle included Redeem the Lost, Research the Deep, Revive the Fallen, Release the Ants, and Recross the Paths. The last cycle was the Tribal Equipment, uncommon artifacts that was play support for one of the 5 races of Morningtide. These artifacts could be attached to a creature of the specific race without paying the equip cost. The 5 equipment cards of the cycle were Cloak and Dagger, Diviner's Wand, Obsidian Battleaxe, Thornbite Staff, and Veteran's Armaments. Last but not least were the notable cards of the Morningtide set. The first card was the blue instant card, Negate. This card saw its first printing in this set and would go on to be one of the most consistent sideboard counterspells of the next 15 years of Magic. Next was the card Disperse. Disperse was a blue instant card that returned a non-land permanent to the owner's hand. This bounce spell had a nice little start to its career, but soon fell out of favor as many new sets included cards that were much better than Disperse. Mutavault was a land card that could become a 2/2 creature with the mana cost of 1. This card was seen as one of the best man land cards since Mishra's Factory. It still sees some play in ladder formats such as Pioneer. Recross the Paths was a green sorcery card that would let you reveal the top of your library until you revealed a land card. You could put that card into play and the rest at the bottom in any order and then clash with an opponent. The card has seen more play in the last few years in the modern format. It is used with the card Goblin Charbelcher for strategies such as combo or mana ramp, thus giving it the deck name Belcher. Murmuring Bosk is a land card with Forest as its label type and having the ability to produce white or black mana at 1 damage cost. While this card can be made searchable with fetchlands, it was essentially a tri-colored land. It saw limited success in mainly the extended format as it was part of both Elves and Doran decks. Idyllic Tutor was a white sorcery card that can let you search for an enchantment card to reveal and be placed in your hand, while strangely one of the only cards to get enchantments directly to the hand. This card is seen mostly in the Commander format. Heritage Druid was a green creature with the ability to tap 3 untapped elves to add 3 green mana to your mana pool. In its early professional days, it saw success in the extended format. However, as the years went on, it was widely successful in Elves decks in both the Modern and Legacy format. Revelark is a white flying creature with Evoke that can return 2 power 2 or less creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield when it leaves. It worked well with creatures such as Mirror Entity and Body Double in combo decks for powerful loop effects. While it had a good run in the standard format, it was successful in the Modern format as it was part of many decks in the 2010s. The most popular deck inclusion was in the strategy called Birthing Pod. Bitter Blossom was a black tribal enchantment that at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 black flying fairy rogue creature. Bitter Blossom was one of the main reasons that fairies were dominant in the standard format and sparsely in the extended format. While it was banned in the early days of the Modern format, it was unbanned in 2014 and has seen a fair amount of professional success in Modern, Legacy, and the Dual Commander formats. Scapeshift was a green sorcery card that can let you sacrifice any number of lands and search for that many lands to place onto the battlefield. Scapeshift was an important card in the modern format, as it combined effectively with the card Valakut the Molten Pinnacle to deal 3 damage numerous times. It was also part of different variation decks that used the combo, but it has made one of the biggest impacts in the modern format for years. The last notable card is Vendilion Clique. This blue legendary creature is considered one of the most iconic creatures in Magic's lifetime. With a combination of hand disruption, aggression, and flash speed, it was one of the most impactful creatures of all time. The card saw numerous professional success in hundreds of decks since its release. It widely affected the standard and extended scene in fairy decks, but had its biggest moments in Modern and Legacy in a vast amount of diverse decks due to its versatility. It is seen to this day as one of the best Swiss Army knives of Magic the Gathering. And there you have it, a history of the Morning Tide expansion set. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Card Anthology. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to the Card Bazaar for more videos such as this one, along with our unofficial audiobooks over the early books of Magic the Gathering. Thank you for clicking the video, and we will see you next time.